And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, of course, is my beautiful co-host Laraib. As we are excited to get into a loaded Week 6 slate of NFL games. Uh, just of note before we start, we have 4 teams on bye weeks. We are finally getting to the point of the season where teams will be on bye. This week, it is the Texans, Lions, Titans, and the I'm forgetting one.
Raiders.
Raiders, yes. So first few weeks of byes, we're gonna have less games, but just more good games to get into. But have anything you want to say before we hop into these games?
No, just if you want to hear our Thursday night preview of that stellar game
You're
that we
gonna
have
want to
tonight
hear
between the
it.
Commanders and the Chicago Bears, go ahead and tune into our Tuesday podcast. But without further ado, Lewis, let's get into Week 6. First, we have the Cincinnati Bengals playing your New Orleans Saints, Lewis. Last week we saw the Saints really get that ground game going. What do you think is going to be the key for success in this one against the Bengals?
Right, Cincinnati favored by 1.5 in this game. I think the biggest key in this game is who's available for the Saints. Quite honestly, it's looking like sounds like I'm beating the drum right here, but if Jameis Winston has a full week of practice, which he has not, and plays, I'm picking against the Saints. And from what I've seen from reports, is Jameis is looking closer and closer to return without practice. Also, Marshawn Lattimore did not practice today, and no Michael Thomas. Even though reports were from last week that Michael Thomas was looking to return this week, he still may. But no Marshawn Lattimore is concerning because the Saints will ride or die with man defense. They want to play man and they want to get after you with their front four. And they have not had much success in the first 5 weeks of getting pressure with their front four, therefore leaving their secondary vulnerable to big plays over the top. And when you have aggressive corners like Marshawn Lattimore, it can, in those, past 3 second scramble drills, it becomes a problem. And that's one of the biggest strengths of the Cincinnati Bengals is those man beaters, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase over the top. So I think that's poses a really big problem for the Saints defense if they can contain the man or just these great receivers for the Bengals. I think the running game, we should be able to stop, or the Saints should be able to stop the Bengals running game. And I'll let you tackle the other side of the ball.
Yeah, the Bengals, their offense has not lived up to the expectations that we thought they were going to live up to. I know T. Higgins was banged up against the Ravens last week, and the thing is, like, they just never are able to get Joe Mixon and that run game going. And now, when you're playing against the Saints front seven, which we know that they're the run stoppers, right? Maybe they can't defend the pass as well, but they're going to stop the run. So I think Joe Burrow in this one, like you're saying, target the man-to-man matchups with Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Chase across the board. And I think it's gonna be a close game, Lewis, just with the Bengals, how bad they've been playing. The Saints have been playing sneakily good. I know Taysom Hill is definitely gonna get in there. At QB a little bit, at running back a little bit, at tight end a little bit. And so he's gonna be the X factor in this game. But I think the Bengals, they can go, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase go back to their old stomping grounds and they eke out a win in New Orleans. So I'm gonna take the Bengals 27-24.
And how I'm thinking about this game, if Jameis Winston plays, the Bengals will win. But if Andy Dalton in his revenge game against his former team, the Cincinnati Bengals, he can get the job done. So I know I'm going to give you a final score. This is me implying that Andy Dalton will start on Sunday. I believe the Saints can get it done. Give me the Saints 27 to Bengals 24. All right, Laraib, that's going to move us into our next contest. We have the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Atlanta. San Francisco coming off the second of a road trip in the NFC South after beating Carolina last week. They are favored by 5.5 points. There were some key injuries on their defensive side of the ball. Emmanuel Mosley, standout corner this season, is out for the year with an ACL. Nick Bosa dealing with a groin, and some of that depth along the defensive line is also affected. Will that matter, though, in this matchup?
Lewis, the 49ers are playing really, really well this season. And those injuries, they've had injuries throughout the whole season, but they've still been able to battle. But I think what the key in this game is going to be, Lewis, is every couple of weeks, we get one of those performances out of Jimmy Garoppolo that just makes you think, oh, man, is this the guy in San Francisco? And I'm praying that he doesn't have one of those typical games where he throws some bad balls and the Falcons stay in it late. And this Falcons team has been sneaky good, Lewis. Last week, barring a, roughing the passer call, they have the ball and have ability to score in a one-score game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so the Falcons don't rule them out just yet. But I think the 49ers, they just have a better roster overall, better coaching. And I think they can sneak out a win if they just get the ground going with Jeff Wilson. He's done a great job in replacing Elijah Mitchell so far. So I'll take the 49ers in this one, Lewis. I think it's going to be a little bit more close, a little bit closer than people expect. But I select the Niners 28-24.
This game is definitely going to be decided on who can get more success in running the ball. And I think with the injuries the Falcons have sustained, you lose Cordero Patterson, obviously. Who knows if Kyle Pitts is playing in this game? It says he's returned to practice. Drake London also a little bit banged up. But the Falcons, their identity is running the ball. And whenever you lose Cordero Patterson, Damian Williams, you're really relying on young running backs like Tyler Algier to get the ball, to get that going. And you still have Fred Warner present. You still have a lot of these, really good defensive veterans on the 49ers. So I think they'll be able to do a lot much better of a job contesting the run than what the Falcons defense can do, especially after trading, standout linebacker Deion Jones last week. So I think this particular matchup favors the 49ers, and this is a game that could honestly be over by, 2:30 because of how these teams are going to run the ball. So give me the 49ers in this one. I'm going to go 49ers 21, Falcons 17.
All right, Lewis, let's move on to another game that we have at the 12 o'clock schedule. We have the New England Patriots going to Cleveland to play the Browns. And, Lewis, you know what type of game this is? This is a Bill Belichick revenge game. I know we always like to bring it up about all the revenge games, but this is actually a really, Bill Belichick in his career has always dominated the Browns. Always, always, always. Last time they played the Browns, the score was 41-5, Lewis, which is just ridiculous. And so the Patriots last week, we saw just how well they played, shut out the Lions. And now we know what Bill like to do. He likes to take away your number one option. So don't expect a big game out of Nick Chubb. And I think he's going to put it all on Jacoby Brissett's shoulders to make some big throws. And Lewis, let me tell you one key stat. Every single time that Jacoby Brissett has thrown an interception this year, the Browns have lost in all 3 games. And so I think he's going to throw a pick in this one, Lewis.
I hate to say, but I do agree with you, Laraib. It just, we talked about in our last episode what, has been plaguing the Browns. And this is a team that should honestly be 4-1 or 5-0 because of how they set themselves up in these games. But like you said, it's a lot of coaching malpractice. It's a lot of, self-sabotage that's killing them in these games. And what do we know about Bill Belichick? He is great at taking away your number one option. And for the Browns, that is Nick Chubb. Now, it's easier said than done to take away Nick Chubb. But if you can quell that Browns running game, then it becomes, a pop gun offense for the Browns, just nickel and diming their way down the field with Jacoby Brissett. And who has more tape on Jacoby Brissett than the New England Patriots? So this matchup just favors all the intangibles, favor the Patriots. I just really think, like you said, Bill Belichick, revenge game. He always gets up for these games against the Browns. Now, on the other side of the ball, Bailey Zappi playing quarterback again. He's been solid, not really making mistakes, leaning on the running game with Ramondre and Damian Harris. So they've been looking pretty solid offensively. So as long as they can hold off on making mistakes and allow this defense to take apart with a Bill Belichick masterclass, I think they're going to have a lot of success. So I'm picking the Patriots to upset the Browns. Give me Patriots 20 to Browns 18.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, Lewis. I think Damian Harris is questionable for this game, and we saw Ramondre Stevenson last week with Damian Harris. He was running all over the Lions, and so he looks like he might be the main guy over there in New England. But I'm gonna agree with you. Let's take the Patriots and upset, Lewis. Give me the Patriots 22-20.
All right, moving on. We have the New York Jets traveling to Green Bay to face the Packers. Packers coming off a disappointing loss in London, now coming back home, favored by 7. The Jets had a really big win last week. A lot of it was against a rookie, inexperienced quarterback in Skylar Thompson for the Dolphins. But can any of that success translate into the frozen tundra?
I think they might be able to, Lewis. I know what we saw out of the Giants last week against the Packers was their run game, right? Saquon Barkley rushing all over the Packers defense. And this week you're playing against a rookie in Breece Hall, who's been absolutely outstanding, Lewis, and Michael Carter, who's also been playing very well. And I know we like to say we don't like to take these first round running backs or some of these earlier picked running backs, but then you have these guys like Christian McCaffrey and Breece Hall. I think he's gonna be one of those guys who's also a receiving threat out of the backfield. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up in the backfield. He's just absolutely incredible what he did last week. He's tackled 2 times at the 1 yard line after, having a 79-yard catch and run and a 29-yard catch and run. And so look for a big game out of him against this Packers front, which really hasn't been able to stop the run at all, Lewis.
Yeah, it's been concerning, this Packers defense, and just how, how they lacked physicality, especially last week against, obviously Saquon Barkley, who's been great, but the Jets have seemingly found an identity with this running game, setting up the play action pass, and a lot of these young guys have been the ones to, step up. And it's, like you said, it's whenever you make these big bargains in the draft, giving up high draft assets for skill position players, it can be looked down upon, but when they're this valuable this early, that's when you made the right decision. However, young guys traveling to Lambeau, it's just a really tall task against this Packers team. And for this Packers team, the mindset is almost panic. You blow a game against the Giants, albeit London. It wasn't really like a fluky game. You were up 2 scores for most of that game until you choked it away. So this is a game where I think all their attention is focused on the Jets. No more messing around. The Packers need this game. Now, I still think it's going to be a close game, but Aaron Rodgers gives himself enough of a cushion to where he doesn't have to be in a win it or go home situation, because we know how that usually fares. So give me the Packers in this one. I'm going to go 27 to Jets 21.
And I'm going to agree with you, Lewis. I like the Packers in this one. As well as the Jets have been playing, their 3 wins have been against the Cleveland Browns, the Miami Dolphins without their starting quarterback, and of course the Pittsburgh Steelers with Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada over there, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So I agree with you. I'm going to take the Packers in this one. A little bit closer than people might expect, but give me the Packers 27-24, Lewis. But moving on to another game, a divisional rematch from earlier this season. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars going to Indianapolis. Indianapolis -1.5 in this one, Lewis. What do you think the Colts can do different in this game than from that first meeting where they were shut out?
They need to be able to run the ball. Jonathan Taylor should be playing in this game after having the 10 days of rest following Thursday Night Football. But if you cannot establish the run against the Jaguars, you're not going to get a much different outcome than the first time. Now, this is a matchup where a lot just went wrong for the Colts, and they go to their house of horrors where they just cannot win a game. And it's very early for a team to already play their divisional opponent this early in the season twice. And a lot of people might be thinking that the Jaguars should win this game. But I think whenever you're facing a divisional opponent, the team who loses, especially when the teams are kind of equal on talent caliber, the other team usually ends up covering, if not winning. And I think the Colts in this one, if they can just run the ball and not make mistakes, that's the big thing. Matt Ryan was a turnover machine in that first game, turning the ball over 3 times. I don't think he's going to do that at home. I think they get the running game going, and that defense really gets after Jacksonville. So I like the Colts in this matchup.
Yeah, and then going on to the other side of the ball, Lewis, we really like the Jaguars early in the season. Trevor Lawrence was playing really well. James Robinson was playing really well. And then back-to-back weeks, they go up big against the Eagles and they let that lead go. And then last week against the Houston Texans, at home, they just completely fall apart. And so now you're playing a Colts team that has extra couple of days of rest. It's a divisional game. They got shut out the first time they played. And so I like the Colts just like you, Lewis. I know you're moaning and groaning over there that we haven't disagreed on many of these picks so far. But I like the Colts in this one with Jonathan Taylor back. Matt Ryan limit the turnovers, and this defense get after Trevor Lawrence just like they got after Russell Wilson last Thursday. So give me the Colts. It's going to be a close game, but I like the Colts 24-23.
I also like the Colts in this matchup. Just a coincidence. You like them too. I just think they get the running game going. I don't even think it's going to be that close. I think this is a game where the Colts, find their way to make their stamp in this division, that if they lose this game could really be falling away from them. So give me the Colts in this matchup. I'm going to go Colts 24 to the Jaguars 16. And that will lead us into our next noon game, where we have the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Miami to face the Dolphins. Minnesota favored by 3.5 on the road. Big thing in this game is no Tua, no Teddy Bridgewater. So Skylar Thompson will be officially starting this week. Bob, I ask you, what success or what can Mike McDaniel do to help Skylar Thompson in this matchup? Because they have the weapons. I feel like as long as they put him in the right places, he can have success against this Vikings defense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just going to be some of those quick throws, Lewis. Nothing that's going to keep him in the pocket, allow the Vikings to pin their ears back and be after him all day. I think it's going to be some of those wide receiver screens, some of those wide receiver slants, some running backs, screens everywhere, I think, in this game. Just get the ball out of Skylar Thompson's hands quickly and allow him to build a rhythm that he can continue to build on from last week. He struggled, of course, he wasn't, ready to play last week, but now with a week of practice underneath his belt, we'll see how he can do it. And it's just going to be getting the ball out quickly to receivers. Because like you were saying, they have the weapons, they just need to get the ball in their hands. But I think, I just don't think he's able to keep pace with the Vikings. We saw Dalvin Cook last week had a really good game. Justin Jefferson had a really good game. They were balling out. And this for this Dolphins defense, they give up 40 points to Zach Wilson last week. I know you have a quarterback who's not really used to playing, but just giving up 40 points is a little, that's not good. How Kirk Herbstreit would put that, just not good, giving up more points than the other team.
Right.
So I like the Vikings this one, Lewis. Rookie quarterback in for the Dolphins. I think Kirk Cousins can get it on, Solar Kirk in those 12 o'clock games. You know how he does during that time frame.
Well, Solar Kirk is going to be feeling the heat in this matchup as this will be the hottest game by far the Vikings are going to play all season. I think that affects them in this game. After thinking about it for a little bit, I think as long as Mike McDaniel can get the running game going, which we saw the Bears get the running game going against the Vikings last week, and just set up, the wide receiver screens, easy passes, and let your receivers do all the work, I think they can formulate a decent offensive plan. And then on the other side of the ball, this is an aggressive defense. This is, in the heat. I think that it was a long, arduous game for the Vikings last week, especially, they played in London 2 weeks ago. This game is just going to be, it's going to be a lot, and I think there might be some injuries in this game, just not getting used to it. So I actually like the Dolphins with the upset in this matchup. I think their defense, has a really big start to this game. I think Kirk Cousins, once he falls down, he won't be able to get back up. So give me the Dolphins in this matchup. I'm going to go Dolphins 24 to Vikings 23.
And I'm going to go ahead and take the Vikings, Lewis. Jetta's, I'm expecting a big game out of him in this one. Give me the Vikings 31-24, Lewis. But moving on to another game, we have the Baltimore Ravens going to New York to play the Jets. Baltimore -6 in this one, Lewis. What do you think Daniel Jones?
The Giants.
Excuse me?
You said the Jets.
Oh, excuse me. Playing the Giants in New York.
Yeah.
Baltimore -6 in this one, Lewis. What do you think the Giants can do at 4-1 to keep that hot streak going?
Well, I think what they need to do is, keep on doing what they've been doing, and that is running the ball, establishing identity with Saquon Barkley, and putting Daniel Jones in positions to not fail. However, against this Ravens defense, which we saw really lock down against the Bengals on Sunday night, I think this is a bad matchup for the Giants. Now, I do think they'll be able to run the ball, but if you put Daniel Jones in any third and long or like must-pass situations, I just think that this aggressive, turnover-hungry defense for the Ravens, which we saw got to Joe Burrow last week, I think they're going to have success against Daniel Jones as well. So what the Giants need to do is try to avoid as many passing situations as possible. And if you do get to those, play it safe, screen games, try some trickery. We saw them pull out a lot of trickery against the Packers, double reverses. But I think coming off a game in London, the travel affected this team, and it was a win at 4-1. I think this is a game where if they get down early, now obviously I'm not saying rest on your laurels because you're 4-1, but this might be a game where they say, hey, it's the Ravens, we just can't do much. So I think this is a game the Ravens can take advantage of, just the perfect situation.
Yeah, and then the Giants on the offensively, at least, they're still banged up all across the board, right? The wide receivers that they've lost this season, Daniel Jones' ankle is still bothering him a little bit. We saw Saquon Barkley go out with a shoulder injury, even though he came back in. That's still going to be a little bit of a problem for him. And so I think the offense is just not able to keep up with the Ravens. And Lewis, if you had to guess, what do you think Lamar Jackson's record is against NFC teams?
So I saw this. So he is undefeated, I think 18-0 against NFC opponents in his career. Am I correct?
He is 12-0 versus
12-0.
NFC opponents, right? But key stat, 0 losses against NFC teams. And so, I gotta take history on this one, Lewis. Give me the Ravens. I think Lamar goes over there to New York and gets it done. Give me the Ravens 26-17.
There definitely is something about not having film on a quarterback you don't see often. And when that quarterback is Lamar Jackson, you're going to be in for a long day. I agree with you. I like the Ravens in this one. I feel like they blow it out early, and the Giants just cannot get it done through the air. So give me the Ravens 31 to Giants 17. And that will lead us into our next game, our last of the noon slate. we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to Pittsburgh to face the Yinzers. Buccaneers favored by 8 points in this matchup, Laraib. Uh, how much is there to talk about in this matchup? Because for me, after seeing what the Steelers did against the Bills, this is a team that lacks a lot of identity, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And it just seems defensively, without TJ Watt, that this unit is a mess. Is there any hope?
No, there's no hope at all. I mean, I said last week, as long as Matt Canada is in at offensive coordinator for the Steelers, I just can't pick this team. I know George Pickens and Kenny Pickett built a little bit of a connection the past 2 weeks. My boy Pickens been balling out on my fantasy bench, so we'll see what he can do against the Bucs defense. But like you're saying, Najee Harris, he's an athletic freak, but when you're playing against that with that bad O line, bad play calling, I really don't see it any way they get any sort of offense going in this game, Lewis. I will say the Bucs were in a close game against the Falcons last week, and now they're traveling all the way to Steel City to play against the Steelers. So that might have to do something. No, not really. Give me the Bucs 31-10 in this one, Lewis.
Yeah, I just think for the Buccaneers, getting Godwin back, another week for him, full week of practice for Godwin, I think is huge as this offense starts to really get back into its rhythm. A really shaky first 5 weeks, but this is a perfect get back game, especially seeing what the Bills did. And I expect Leonard Fournette, who had a big bounce back game last week against the Falcons, to have another really good game in this one. So yeah, no contest in my opinion. Give me the Buccaneers 33 to Steelers 13.
All right, let's move on to another game. Finally, we are moving into the 3 o'clock window. For the first game, we have the Carolina Panthers without Matt Rule playing the Los Angeles Rams. Los Angeles minus 10.5 in this one, Lewis. How do you feel about this Panthers team after Matt Rule is gone?
So there's always something about the week after you fire your head coach. It's super unpredictable. In these matchups, the teams against the spread are 60% in hitting the spreads. So this might be a game where you're like, the Panthers have no chance. The Rams are desperate. And I agree with you. But this Panthers team is still has talent, especially defensively. Brian Burns off the edge, Derek Brown, they have defensive pieces. And against this front for the Rams, which has been putrid all year, I just can't see how the Rams really run it up unless they just put on a coaching masterclass from McVay. So I think this is going to be a close game. I still have the Rams winning it, but I just think sometimes, Steve Wilks, he's stepping up as the interim coach for the Panthers. He can provide a sort of boost of morale, just a new face, a new voice, because we knew a lot of the locker room already kind of quit on Matt Rule. So maybe just that new voice invigorates this team. But the Rams are in a desperate situation. They need a win, and this is an opponent to get that must win. So I hope they don't look over the Panthers. But I actually have the Panthers covering just barely. I have the Rams winning 30-21.
Yeah, and the big thing is Baker Mayfield is still a quarterback for the Panthers, right? So you can say what you say about coaching changes or anything like that. You still have him over there at under center. And so give me the Rams, just like you're saying. They're a desperate team, Lewis. They really need this big win right here. Looking at their schedule going forward, they have a lot of tough games still. And this is gonna be one of those games where you can, get right, as get right as you can. And so give me the Rams. I agree with you. The Panthers are going to cover this one, but I still like the Rams 31-24.
All right, let's move on now to our next 3 o'clock game. We have the Arizona Cardinals traveling to Seattle, where they face the Seahawks. Seahawks are 3-point underdogs in this matchup at home. I feel like I know which way you're leaning in this one, Laraib. So tell me what you're looking for. Can the Seahawks offense replicate that performance they put on in New Orleans at home?
I think they definitely can, Lewis. A lot of it was through the air with Geno Smith, and we know how well he's been playing. Let me give you some stats, Lewis. He's 7th in the NFL for touchdown passes thrown, which is 9. He's 4th in the NFL for interceptions, only thrown 2 all season. And then he's 4th in the NFL in QBR, Lewis, at a 74.6 rating. So all across the board, his numbers are really good. He's been playing really well. And against the Cardinals defense, which hasn't been able to stop much all season long, I think he can continue some of the same success. And I think this game is gonna be a really high scoring shootout, Lewis. And I like the 12th man to be the extra factor in this game. And I like the Seahawks at home.
So there is some question marks on when exactly this game is going to be played. Right now it's scheduled for 3, but the Mariners postseason might push this game back to potentially 5:30. I don't think that's going to matter in this matchup. I know I need a game on you this week because I've already thrown out a risky one, but I just can't get behind the Cardinals. Everything is
Oh,
pointing towards the Seahawks in this matchup because we saw what really killed the Seahawks last week was Taysom Hill in that power running game. But James Conner is not playing in this matchup, and you're really relying on Eno Benjamin to be that power runner, which really he is not. And Kyler Murray, I think this offense has success, but not to the same extent to where they can match what Seattle's able to do. And I believe in Kenneth Walker. I think he's done a good job. Now, I will say this Cardinals defense has been impressive after that Chiefs game, only allowing 20 points to the Eagles last week, and they really held their own. So, but I think Geno is genuinely playing good football. I don't think it's, a few good games here and there. I think, he did have that really bad game against the 49ers in week 2, but that was the 49ers. Everyone's having bad games against them. So I think that he's genuinely playing good football, and I think they can win this game at home. So give me the Seahawks. I'm going to go 31 to Cardinals 30. Late field goal wins it.
yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, or you're gonna agree with me. I'm taking the Seahawks 31-28. My Hawks get it done and get a leg over the Cardinals in their divisional standings, Lewis. But let's move on to the game of the week. The
Woo!
Buffalo Bills travel to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Buffalo -3, Lewis. What do you think about that line?
It's a lot. Patrick Mahomes has never been a home underdog in his career. And the last matchup against Tampa, in which he was an underdog, which was like the first time he's been an underdog in however many games, well, we saw what happened. He put on a masterclass against that defense, and that game was not a contest pretty much the entire time. However, this is a Bills team that has something to prove after last season, after the way it ended, the 13 seconds, everything you can say about that game. One of the greatest games of my postseason watching career. And I think this is a game that the Bills are really going to get up for. And there's so much to talk about in this matchup. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, just the weapons on the outside. I will say, as much as I really love the Chiefs this season, there's something about their offense that at times it can get so Travis Kelce dependent. And that Vegas pass rush in the first half for the Monday night game was really getting to Patrick Mahomes. But, you kept doing field goals instead of touchdowns for the Raiders offense. And I think this Bills offense, we know that when they're in a position to really get up and go ahead, they do not press the brakes. They go for touchdowns. They hit big plays. So I'm just concerned about, can this Chiefs offense have explosive plays to match the Bills? Because Patrick Mahomes has been great in orchestrating these long drives, but I just think against this Bills defense, which has been playing amazing, it's going to be really hard to get these really long drives going. So I think the Bills have the advantage in this matchup.
And you're not gonna like to hear this, Lewis, but I have to agree with you in this one. So
You're a
you
bum.
talk about the Chiefs against the Buccaneers. What was a big storyline in that game? Patrick Mahomes going against the Buccaneers after that Super Bowl loss, right? That was a big game for the entire Chiefs organization after being embarrassed by the Buccaneers in Super Bowl. Now you look at this Bills team. Now this is a big revenge game for them after the whole 13-second debacle from last offseason. And you think about the guys that they brought in, such as Von Miller to help them combat this. And this is what's been on their mind all offseason long, Lewis, against, that 13 seconds play against Patrick Mahomes. And this is what they're here to do. This is what they're built for. They're built to beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. So I like the Bills in this one, Lewis, just like you.
Just like me.
We saw how much the Chiefs offense struggled. And, it's been a lot of, you think back to that Monday night game against the Raiders when they had the ball and it's third down and Mahomes he misses Mecole Hardman on a big play that would have ended the game, right? You think back to the Chiefs game, to the Buccaneers game on Sunday night a couple of weeks ago, when they had it wasn't a close game at all, but he missed Clyde Edwards-Helaire and it bounced off his shoulder pads and it's a drop pass. And so they've had these miscues all throughout the whole season, Lewis. That makes me kind of hesitant on what they can do offensively at least. And so I like the Bills in this one. It's gonna be a close game. It's gonna, the best game of the week, but I like the Bills 34-31.
Yeah, as much as I want to change my opinion now, it's really laid out for the Bills to take this one. However, come postseason time, I don't think I would take the Bills in this matchup. But I think in the regular season, The Bills have a lot to play for. And this is another one of those, this game could really decide who wins the MVP this season, as these two quarterbacks have really distanced themselves from the fields as MVP favorites. So I got to root where the money is. Give me Josh Allen and the Bills. I'm going to have them winning. I'm going to say a lower scoring game than a lot of people predict. I'm going to go 24-23. Late field goal wins it. A lot of craziness, a lot of turnovers, histrionics. This is going to be definitely the game of the week, probably game of the year. So I do hope it's a little more high scoring, but I just want to be a little edgy in that sense. But now to another, if the Bills Chiefs weren't playing this week, this would probably be the game of the week. You have the Dallas Cowboys traveling to Philadelphia, 4-1 Cowboys, 5-0 Eagles. Philadelphia favored by 6. When are people going to stop sleeping on the Cowboys, Laraib?
Well, it's going to be after this game, Lewis. I like the Eagles to win, heads up, but I still like the Cowboys to cover. All right, that's what we're getting to the best bets in a little bit. But I like the Cowboys to cover on this one. It's been about that defense all year long, and they haven't done anything to prove us wrong, Lewis. The defense has been balling out across all fronts. We saw last week that they got the touchdown against the strip sack against Matt Stafford last week for the touchdown, and they're going to keep on balling out. But I think the big thing in this game, Lewis, is going to be Cooper Rush gets finally put back in his coop in this one. The birds finally corral him, and he comes back down to earth, Lewis. And this one, the Eagles front seven has also been really underrated this year. That Darius Slay, how well he's been playing, Fletcher Cox, and all those guys on the front seven. Everyone likes to talk about Jalen Hurts and the high flying offense, but that defense has been really playing really well this season.
Yeah, I will say, if there's one thing you can say about this Cowboys defense that's been their Achilles heel, has been their run defense. And we know how potent this Eagles run defense or running attack is. Now, if your best bet is to get Jalen Hurts in the pocket with Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence just wrecking havoc all over the field. So, but I think the Philadelphia Eagles, if you get those pass rushers going this way, just vertical, and you run right behind them, it's going to make them a lot less effective in future, play action situations, and you can get the ball out to your playmakers. So I think Philadelphia has that edge, and I think these two teams are just so good, and I've really changed my opinion on the Cowboys. However, this being the home game, like I said for the Ravens last week, I think if these two teams were to split, I think the Eagles take the home game. So I like the Eagles in this matchup. And like you said, Cooper Rush flying way too high. I just think against this Philly defense that if they can't get this running game going, which the Eagles have been great against the run, those big bodies up front, Jordan Davis, the rookie's been playing really well. If they can't get the running game going, it's going to be a lot on Cooper Rush's shoulders to win this game. And we're going to see why Dak Prescott is going to be back sooner rather than later. Give me the Eagles in this matchup. I'm going to go 24-20. Birds fly. But yes, Cowboys cover.
Yes, it's going to be the two things we'll look out for in this game, Lewis, is going to be AJ Brown versus Trevon Diggs, and on the other side, CeeDee Lamb versus Darius Slay. I think whichever one of those receivers can win that matchup, that team is really good winning this game. And so I like the Eagles 27-26 at home, Lewis. But that will conclude Sunday. But moving on to Monday, the Denver Broncos visiting Los Angeles, play the Chargers. And Lewis, I think this game very well has two of the worst coaches in the entire NFL. Brandon Staley last week was just begging the Browns to win that game, and Nat Hackett PI has just been awful all season long. Having to bring in guys to tell him what to do in certain situations, which is just crazy. Like, how do you not know how to situational awareness in football? But anyway, the Broncos get an extra 10 days of rest. Russell Wilson's been dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury, but I think he's good to go in this one. Lewis, who do you like in this game?
You said it best. This is a matchup of two of the teams I hate the most in football, because it makes me pull my hair out watching them every single week as we see coaching malpractice. This is the battle for who Sean Payton is going to be coaching for next year. And I'd much rather him be coaching for the Chargers because their first round picks. No, the Broncos, because their first round picks can be a lot nicer than the Chargers. But I will be picking the Chargers in this matchup. I just trust Herbert more than I do Russell Wilson. This game is in Los Angeles. However, it will be 80% Broncos fans.
Broncos home game.
Broncos on prime time. They've been awful this season. The only game they've won, or the only two games they've won, have been out of prime time. So Is that true?
No, they beat the 49ers on Sunday Night Football.
Yes. And that was aberration. Now, I will say this Broncos defense has been very impressive this season. And I love what Pat Surtain has been able to do as a corner. But I just think this team is so hamstrung by that lackluster offense that it's really going to affect them in this game. And when you're taking Herbert, I just, as much as he confuses me sometimes because he just blows games against Jacksonville and then balls out in games that I think he's going to lose. This is a game, it's very hard to predict. And I understand this is why I'm not going to hint to where you're going with this one. But I understand you're thinking the way you're thinking. But I'm going to go with the Chargers, the proven commodity. And let's go Herbert.
Yeah, I think the Broncos will start to get something going against this week against the Chargers defense, which has been missing players all year round, giving up big runs to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt last week. And then the Broncos defense, which we both love Pat Surtain so much. He's one of our guys, including Jeremy Chin and Matt Milano, add him to that list.
Yes, sir.
And so I think the Broncos can get something going, especially after that extra couple days of rest. It's going to be a home game for them, even though they're on the road. And like you're saying, I like the Chargers better to get Sean Payton. And so if they lose this game, Brandon Staley's seat just gets that little bit much hotter. And so give me the Broncos 23-20 on Monday night.
I'm going to go with the Chargers 27-20. I just think that this offense is too potent. And as much as I do like the Broncos defense, I think Russell Wilson gives Justin Herbert some short fields that he will take advantage of. But that will do it for this week's slate of games. However, before we conclude, of course, we had to give you our upset, lock, and best bets of the week. I will start with my upset. I kind of changed. I did a little ad lib in the middle of it. I was going to go with the Cowboys, but as I was looking at this Dolphins team in this matchup, I just think this is the perfect game. This is the perfect Vikings suck type of game that, all their fans are hyped because the Packers lost. They're winning. They're going up against this third string quarterback. It's more of a I don't trust the Vikings, and I like what Mike McDaniel has been building, and it's just unfortunate that this Tua situation had happened to them. But I think he gets a hard fought win, and I like the Dolphins as my upset.
All right, Lewis, and for my upset, I like the Broncos. I just alluded to it. I like the Chargers to start tanking a little bit to get in the Sean Payton sweepstakes. And the Broncos defense is playing really well. And so I think they're the X factor in this one. So give me the Broncos on the road, at home, Broncos.
Who needs Victor Wembanyama when you can have Sean Payton coaching your team? But for the lock of the week, this was an interesting one to pick. My lock is the San Francisco 49ers against Atlanta. I just think that this team, this veteran defense is going to be able to contain Marcus Mariota. They saw a little bit of Mariota with Vegas, and I think that just the matchup works better in the 49ers' favor. I don't feel great about it just because this is a game where really one turnover can dictate the game because it's so run heavy. This game could be over in 2.5 hours. But I do like the 49ers just because of the veterans on the team. And Jimmy, just don't make any mistakes.
Kyle Shanahan revenge game.
Sure, yeah.
And for my lock of the week, I obviously have to go with the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson undefeated against NFC teams, and I think he continues that streak this week against the Giants team, which is banged up on the offensive side of the ball. And so give me the Ravens on the road.
All right, and then our best bets of the week. I'm giving you an easy one. I actually looked at it. I am 4-1 with my best bets. The only one I lost on was that stupid Miami-Baltimore game. But I feel confident about this one. Give me the New England Patriots to cover. I would have liked it much better at 3, but at plus 2.5, you're still getting decent value. I just think everything we laid out saying about the Patriots, this matchup really favors them. The coaching advantage is just too apparent for me, so I like the Patriots.
All right, Lewis, and for my best bet, it's going to be the Cowboys plus 6, and you're going to parlay that with the Rams money line. I know we really like the Rams in this one to beat the Carolina Panthers, especially with Baker Mayfield still playing quarterback, and the Cowboys plus 6. I know we really like that defense. It's going to be a close game, divisional game, and so you can parlay those two together to get plus 129 odds on that.
All right, so that will do it for this week's podcast. If you want to hear what we thought about last week's games, last week's action, or this upcoming Thursday night football game, go check out the last episode. It was one of our better ones. You could see Laraib's DK Metcalf touchdown ball that we caught at the game. Also, check out all of our socials in our description below. You can check us out on all these platforms. We will remind you always of updates, and you can check us out on Spotify and YouTube.
All right, and that's gonna be the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.